Hello, everyone, and welcome to Tabor Talk. I'm your host, Michael Tabor, and I got my winter coat on. So it's September 13th, Friday the 13th. How about that? So, getting my winter beard going. I'm going to shave it off, I think. It's not winter yet, it's only September 13th. Okay, so getting right into this. Everyone knows that I am probably the biggest Joe Rogan fan, Joe Rogan Experience, JRE, the Joe Rogan Experience, the biggest fan ever, right? Like Kathy Bates. Kathy Bates, for you young people, watch that movie. You haven't seen Kathy Bates, it's a classic, right? I'm your number one fan. She's crazy, though. Watch the movie Misery. I won't give anything away. Kathy Bates, James Caan as a writer. Kathy Bates is James Caan's number one fan. Okay, you don't have to worry, Joe. I'm not like that. But I've listened to every one of Joe's podcasts. Beginning day one, December 24th, 2009, Christmas Eve. Joe Rogan and Brian Redban in his house, in his basement, just on a stupid video. It's so amateurish. It's even more amateurish than this. He's just fucking around. They're trying to set up the podcast, and that's what it is for 3 hours. But they're talking, and Joe is the best. I'm like, this is magic, Joe's personality. However, again, I've listened to every single one of his podcast episodes. What is it, 1,344 now? Something like that. Every minute of every podcast. Like I said, I'm his number one fan. So when you know someone that well, which is basically Joe being Joe, he's had all these guests, learned so much. What an education. More than I've ever learned in college. It's not even close. Joe Rogan's podcast. He has everyone on: scientists, writers, fighters, comedians, actors, anyone. Businessmen, entrepreneurs, politicians. Joe is smart, but when you know someone so well, number one, he repeats his stories. He's a great storyteller. Now I know that, and Joe is a stand-up comedian, so I know he has bits, but he repeats his stories. I've heard most, I wouldn't say most, but yeah, more than half he's repeated, and he goes on. And you gotta commend him, because he puts the energy in every time he tells a story. So I guess most people do that. I don't think I do so much. Well, maybe I do. I guess we all do it, right? We all have these stories, but I try to be fresh every single time. And I try, and this is, I'm spontaneous. Like, I've never talked about this before, right? So, okay. So there's that. So Joe repeats his stories. And by the way, I've had a good friend of mine, and actually he watches these videos. He goes, the Rogan stuff, you talk about him so much, you're obsessed with him, like, stop with it. And I go, well, I'm his number one fan. Okay, so I think Joe is brilliant, and I would actually say he's a genius, and he's one of a kind. He is a special human being. But, and he's super charming. Like, I fell in love with him the first time I saw him. It was like, I love this guy. Not in a homo way, I'm heterosexual. I just love, but okay, just want to get that clear. I mean, if I was gay, I would tell you, right? And I'm not. But I would tell you. I would tell anyone if I was gay. But I'm not. It's cool to be gay, all right? I'm being a little silly here. Okay, so going back to Joe Rogan. I'm going to give you 5 examples of Joe, things just going over his head. So, again, as I said, I think Joe Rogan's a genius. He's not an obvious intellectual, but he is. But sometimes he is in over his head. Like when he has, I don't know, Sean Carroll or Sam Harris on, there are times when it just goes over Joe's head. Okay, recent history. Very recent history. Joe's latest guest from yesterday, Dan Aykroyd, was on. And this is comedy, too. Joe should get this. He's a comedian. Dan Aykroyd's on, and he goes, oh, my God, Joe, I should have bought my BB gun to bounce off your stomach. And Joe goes, BB gun? What's a BB? A BB? He goes, dude, it's a fucking joke, right? Do we have to explain what a joke is? He's saying, Joe, you're in fucking great shit. I should have brought my BB gun on and to bounce it off your stomach. Joe, come on, dude, get with the program. You're a comedian. And when he explains something, it goes, all right. That's recent history. Then the day before, Nick Bostrom. Now, Nick Bostrom's a super high level, one of the smartest guys on planet Earth. And he's the guy who came up with the simulation hypothesis, simulation argument, simulation theory. And like I said, his book is right here. I'm rereading this. Nick Bostrom's jotting another thing down, what Joe did. So I just, this is what I do. Just a couple of notes when I do these. That's it. And you can't even read that scribble. Okay, so Nick Bostrom's on, and for an hour, Nick is trying to explain probability theory, right? Now, this is controversial. I get it. I'm actually going to do it. I'm going to play it for the last hour. I'm going to play it and discuss it, the whole thing. I'll play the podcast. And listen, most people won't get it. It's a tough one. Understanding probability theory and the anthropic principle. I'll get into it in another video recording. But it went way the fuck over Joe's head. Did not get it at all. All right. Okay, so Nick Bostrom. Neil deGrasse Tyson was on. One of my favorite guys. One of my favorite people on planet Earth. Neil deGrasse Tyson. Love them. Love him. Right? He is just the best of taking complex issues and bringing it down so that everyone understands it without watering it down. He is simply the best. Neil deGrasse Tyson. Love him. So, talking about gravity, and Neil deGrasse Tyson says, like, we all know, right? You have matter and motion, 4 laws, right? Gravity, electromagnetism, and then you have the 2 forces, strong and weak force within the atom, right? So you have 4 forces, and that's physics, the laws of physics, the fundamental rules of nature, the fundamental laws, 4 of them. And then if you say, okay, gravity, well, where did gravity come from? And then you go into philosophy. So you have science, the laws of nature, you find out how things work, how nature works. That's what it is, the most interesting science out there. And then when it becomes speculative, then it gets into philosophy. So science to philosophy. So if you were to ask the question, in fact, Sam Harris talked about it. He was talking, his little daughter is like 10 years old. She goes, Daddy, what's gravity? And he spent like 20 minutes explaining to her what's gravity. And then after she goes, well, where did gravity come from? She goes, that nobody knows. That's, now you're in philosophy terrain. Okay. So same sort of conversation with Joe. Joe's like a little kid, right? So Neil deGrasse Tyson's talking about Einstein's paper and relativity and space-time, the bending of space-time. And he goes, then they kind of got into like, where do these forces come in? I think he was he talking about Maxwell? Whatever. But the fact that space, like gravity, the problem was, was a gravity force at a distance, a great distance. And even this is a little hard for me to comprehend. I get it, but it's force at a distance. And but was it Maxwell who said this? I'm not sure. It doesn't matter. But it was a mystery. Like, how does gravity? We understood gravity, but we're at great distances, and it turns out it's because of space-time is bent. Okay, all right. You don't have to understand that concept to get it. You know what I'm saying? You don't have to get super deep in it, and no one is expecting you to understand space-time totally. But here's where Joe gets silly and childish. So he goes, Neil deGrasse Tyson said there's always an explanation, and when you get to the point like we don't fully understand gravity and quantum mechanics and all that. Of course not. We're working on it, and then he just said, again, back to that thing of gravity. What is gravity? He goes, but I'm a scientist, and I'm content with that. And for like 45 minutes, Joe was like, what do you mean? Like, you're a scientist. Like, how you're supposed to question things? Don't you want to know? And he's like, dude. And Neil deGrasse Tyson is patient, and he's a super nice guy. But basically, he was talking about the science and philosophy thing. Yes, of course, I want to know what gravity is. But if I know how it functions and I can make predictions with precision. I could send a probe to Mars and pinpoint with exact precision. And I know how gravity goes, and it's beautifully the way he describes it. Like 10 minutes, he describes, better than I'm doing now. And Joe goes, but don't you want to know? I go, oh my God, Joe. Like, do you don't understand that the argument of science and philosophy when it goes beyond science? Of course, Neil deGrasse Tyson's a scientist. Okay, so and I jotted down. I'll go on again. Watch that. It's almost embarrassing. It's cringeworthy. Like, Joe, come on, get with the program, Joe. Wayne Fetterman. This is a little while ago, but I remember it. The whole thing is a joke. Wayne Fetterman is a comedian, and he's on with Joe. It started out first half hour. It was great. And then Wayne started poking Joe about this fighting, cage fighting. Joe's a cage fighter commentator. And when you think about it, the whole fight world is insane. It's preposterous. On some level, it's ridiculous. Like human beings fucking killing each other. It's basically battery. It's legalized battery. It's like if this was not sanctioned by the state, they'd be in jail forever. You're fucking killing each other. Listen, it's a controversial thing, willing participants, but still, it's savagery. And on some level, it's ridiculous and preposterous. So Wayne Fetterman's playing on that. He's saying, hey, Joe, he's asking about Joe. He's almost turning it around and interviewing Joe. He's like, when did you get into martial arts? And Joe's all serious. He goes, oh, I started out with Taekwondo. I used to compete, and then he's going, you kick someone in the face because you ever get knocked out? And he's busting him a little bit. He's like, oh my God. And he goes, and then Joe starts talking about all these fights, details with the names. He goes, it's amazing that you remember all these names. Because, like, Joe is an expert. He's an encyclopedia when it comes to martial arts. So Wayne Fetterman, a layperson speaking from outside, is like amazed, like, holy shit, like this is a job. You see what I mean? Okay, so he's busting him. And then they were talking about this one particular fight. And Joe's all serious. And he goes, yeah, and he came in and he hit him with a flying knee. And Wayne Fetterman goes, flying knee sounds like an Indian name, like an Indian, he's making fun of him. Joe's all serious. What? For an hour and a half, it's all Wayne Fetterman ribbing Joe. And Joe doesn't get it. Go on JRA, Joe Rogan Experience. Download from maybe 3 years ago, the Wayne Fetterman podcast. It's Wayne Fetterman just going way over Joe Rogan. Okay, last one. I'm almost 12 minutes here. This is early on. Brian Redband. Now this is almost a dick joke. Like, how does Rogan not get this? Brian Redband says, "Hey, this is back when Joe was podcasting out of his house," and Redband goes, "Oh, thanks for the toilet," and he goes, and I'm going to butcher the joke here, and he goes, oh my God, it's the toilet. It's so cold and deep too. And Rogan's like, what? Cold, deep? Fucking Joe, that's joke 101. He's saying his dick is big. He's taking a leak over the toilet, and his dick is so long that not only is it cold, it's deep too. And it goes right over Joe Rogan's head. And Brian Redband's afraid of Joe. Like, Joe's a great guy. He's a sweetheart, but there's a pecking order there. That Brian Redband works for Joe, and Joe's the boss. And even in social relationships, it's like Redband's not going to call Joe out on that. Like, nobody's calling Joe out, except for maybe Wayne Fetterman. Okay, so this is just 5 examples. There are hundreds of more. Again, I'm his biggest fan. Maybe I'm super critical. I listen too closely. But every time he has, like, Sean Carroll on, listen, I love the guy. I listen to him every day, and I learn a lot from him. I've learned more from listening to the Joe Rogan Experience than I've had college. And Joe could be brilliant too. Even when he breaks down, like when he talks about nature and hunting and martial arts, he's the best. And sometimes, like, wow, he's so brilliant. He surprises you, like, you're a fucking brilliant. Okay, I'll wrap it up there. So nobody's perfect. I understand that. I'm not perfect myself, but Joe has 1.2 billion downloads. I think 7, 8, 9, 10 million, depending on the guest, but over 5 million per episode. When he tweets something, he gets millions of responses. When I tweet something, I get maybe 40 or 50. I have 41 subscribers. Joe has like, how many people does he have following him? Like 100 million. So, okay, I have a right to talk shit about Joe Rogan. Okay, I'll end it there. I'm over 15 minutes, and I could go on more, but I'll end it here. Tabor Talk. Good friends, good books, and a sleepy conscience. Peace, love, and understanding. Love you, Joe. Having said all that shit, love you, Joe. And I'm going to finish up on the Dan Aykroyd podcast. I haven't finished it yet, but dude, it's a joke. Dan Aykroyd said he's going to bring his BB gun in and shoot it off your stomach. Okay. Peace, love, and understanding.